Alright, this time we're looking at a blog site. It's Quora.com, and someone asked the question in People of Ancient Egypt. Okay, why do some say that the ancient Egyptians mostly painted their skin red in their art, as though rusty reddish brown, or red ochre as we know of it, doesn't represent dark skin? And it really doesn't. You can see that the ancient Greeks and Minoans and all of those guys who we know are pale don't use it, and they have pale women and their darker skin, and it's a Caucasian thing that is an edict where the women aren't supposed to work and have to toil, and therefore the men get dark and the women stay pale because they have a tan ability. And this goes back, red ochre barrels go back to like caveman times and stuff, so it's not something that really came out in a certain time, although all of this art that we know of contains the idea. And of course all the old cave art even and stuff has a lot of red ochre in it and things like that. So before we get into it and just go straight, let me go down here to where there's a guy that actually gives the answer to why they look this way and why it does appear this way. Color in Ancient Egypt, Symbolism and Realism, a spotlight on Afrocentric dishonesty. Ancient Egyptians decorated their homes, gardens, palaces, and tombs with impressive works of art, which reflect their appreciation from all that the gods had given them, and accented these depictions with vibrant colors. The palace of Amenhotep III at Malkata was brightly painted, the outer walls of white and the interiors of blue, yellow, and green, with murals on ornamentation throughout. These colors were not chosen randomly, but each had a very specific symbolism for the Egyptians, and they were used to convey that significance. They only had about 6 colors, and they started out with a different way to make blue too, and so on with a malachite. But let's get on here. So, color, creation, and symbolism. The different colors below are listed with their Egyptian name following, the materials used in creating them, and what they symbolized. The definitions follow the work of Richard H. Wilkinson and his Symbolism and Magic in Egyptian Art, and Margaret Bunson's Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt, supplemented by other works too. And so, first of all, they had a lot of colors, and they black, so they known it as Kim. And they also called the land there Kemet, because it's this real black soil and just a strip right down the Nile. And so it's really the farmlands. And they didn't really name the whole place that. They actually kind of named the farmlands that. But then again, that's the major subsistence of the Egyptian people. Before the Sumerians brought them the grains that they grew and all the cattle from there in Anatolia and stuff, they really were quite a different culture back Badarian and before that. But we're not really going to get into that in this one. Black is made from carbon, ground charcoal mixed with water, and sometimes burnt animal bones. In fact, a lot of times it's burnt animal bones, and that's significant, symbolizing death, darkness, and the underworld, as well as life, birth, and resurrection. Kind of an ashes to ashes, dust to dust situation, right? Wilkinson's right, the symbolic association of the color with the life and fertility may well have originated in the fertile black silt deposited by the Nile in its annual flooding, and Osiris, god of the Nile and the underworld, thus frequently depicted with black skin. And he's also depicted with green skin, and quite often he's green skin laid on his back, and they're growing plants up out of him and things like that. And this is the idea, it's strange to say, but people say they're turning into worm dirt or whatever off of it, but ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and da-da-da, and the fertility of the land, and it's a cyclical things, and things, here we go. And that's what gives richness to soil and things, and that coming down the Nile. So black and green are often used interchangeably in Egyptian art, in fact, as symbols of life. Statues of the gods were frequently carved from black stone, but just as often from green. And at the same time, that doesn't mean it depicts a Negro person. It's just a fertility symbol. They show you a lot of these people, and they'll have a black statue of that same person. That's supposed to go along with them in their death ritual too. In a lot of your states, you'll see that in some of their symbology, and a fertility symbol and so on. But other than that, they aren't depicted that way. But Negrocentrics would they like to grab all those pictures and go, look, and stuff. They're black. And it's funny because it looks like a Caucasian person wearing blackface whenever they show most of them, Sure, some of them might have a little bit larger lips than normal, and oh my gosh, well, Angelina Jolie has larger lips than normal, and oh my gosh. In fact, she looks kind of Egyptian-y a little bit. You just add a little bit of makeup to them eyes like they did and snap. But let's not go. Let's just keep going here. Although black was associated with death, it had no connotation of evil, which was represented by red, and frequently appears along with green or instead of green in depictions of the afterlife. And that's not necessarily true, too. Black was always seen as the opposite of white. White was lightness and pure in things, and black was dirty and so on. Just like, they wear a lot of white clothes, so, man, you get a smudge on that, and the darker the smudge. And it's not anything against people, and it's not racist. It's just colors and symbology and simple things. Like, we still use black today to symbolize death. Like, when we go to a funeral, what do people wear? Right? We also use it for judgment and things like that, like the Bible. What color is the sleeve on most Bibles? Sure, you can get a pretty one, but what color is it? Right. And then what color is the judge's robe? Right. And this is a symbolic thing that's gone back how long? Right. So, Anubis, the god who guides the dead to the hall of judgment and is presented at the weighing of the soul's heart, is almost always depicted as a black figure, as is Bastet, goddess of women, one of the most popular deities in all of Egypt. Tattoos of Bes were done in black ink, and images of the afterlife frequently make use of a black background, not only to accentuate the gold and white and pop off the background, but also symbolize the concept of rebirth and the cosmic concept of what they're pulling in. And they always had stars on the top of their tombs, and you could see some of their big gold statuettes and things. They have these big dilated eyes. When somebody dies, their eyes dilate. But also, if you'll look, they've made it real sharp onyx. And some of these, you can almost see it's like a little sparkly. It almost looks like they're looking at the sky, type of thing. But other ones are definitely blue-eyed, and you won't see them in this article, though I'm pretty certain of it. Blue is a different one, and it's known as Ertui or Keshbedi and Kesbej. And blue is like the sky and so on like that. It's one of the most popular colors, but not used constantly. But in some places it definitely is. There's a few temples that have it in a lot of it, but other ones don't. And there's a symbology with that concept too. Commonly referred to as Egyptian blue, it's made from copper and iron oxides with silica and calcium, symbolizing fertility also, birth and rebirth, life, and usually used to depict water in the heavens, while in the sky, that's what I was saying before. Wilkinson writes, by the same token, blue could signify the river Nile and associates with crops, offering fertility, water itself, and many of the so-called fecundity figures, which represent the river Nile bounty, are of this hue. There's also a blue hippo that's famous, and now there's this group that's called Blue Hippo, and a few of the animals that come from there they've done in blue, and blue crocodiles and things like that, and even blue lions. There's a famous one where a blue lion's grabbing hold of a Nubian's head and so on like that. So there's a lot of these blue showing you that type of significance and stuff. Statues and depictions of the god Thoth are routinely blue, or blue-green, or have some aspect of blue in them, linking the god of wisdom with the life-giving heavens. Blue also symbolized protection. Fertility amulets of the protector god Bes were often blue, as were the tattoo of women who wear Bes of a diamond-shaped pattern on their lower abdomen, back, and thighs. And so they found a lot of tattoos on all these Egyptians, and your Nubian and your common Negro, and the admixed Negroes nowadays have a lot lighter skin, and they're trying to bleach themselves to all kinds of stuff, but normally tattoos won't show up. That's the reason the Nubians and a lot of the Negroid tribes did body scarring and things like that. Certain people want to do things, so they're going to do something like that, and tattooing comes here, and it goes through Sumerian and all the way up and into the Proto-Indo-Europeans we've been talking about, and then of course it gets into China and stuff, and everybody's like, tattoos came from China, and these people over here, and you're like, who talked to both of those people? We aren't going to go there necessarily in this, though. This isn't about Proto-Indo-Europeans. So yellow is kinnet or kinnet, and it's made from ochre and oxides originally, but New Kingdom, circa 1570 and 1069 BC, made from arsenic trisulfide and symbolizing the sun and eternity. Yellow was darkened for the golden flesh color of the gods, or lightened with white or chalk to suggest purity or some sacred aspect of a character or object. And if these were Negroes, they would probably have the opposite of that idea. But Isis, for example, is always depicted with gold skin and a white dress. But sometimes her dress is a light yellow to emphasize her eternal aspect in a scene or story. And even in the tombs in Nubia, up in there in Meroe, have Isis and things on the wall and these pale gods, and you're like, yeah, well, they were subjugated by the Egyptians. They were kind of mocking that religion, and instead of doing the thing like modern black people are doing, trying to say, oh, they're black, is to actually worship that god and the way that it was, so they're not blaspheming and doing something that's just totally out of order and stuff. But so let's see. Wilkinson suggests that priests of the god Anubis would color their skins yellow on certain occasions to become the god for that event. Because in some of the events where it shows you on the wall, they're done yellow there, and in the other ones, they're done with this pale pink-white color. And priests and women who stay indoors, and all the indoor and scribes and so on, usually don't have as dark a skin. Scribes will have a little darker skin, though, because they go fishing and do all kinds of stuff. That's on the walls, too. But they generally stay in school a lot. But they also get out and they do sun worship and all these type of things a lot more than the other people do. And then you have the effect where there's workers and field workers and farmers, and just like a redneck, man, they get a tan on them. And they're, you know, right about the border of like, oh, I don't know, southern Texas area, lower Florida and stuff. And you take somebody and put them in a pair of shorts and make them work out in the sun all day, and they're getting dark as hell. And of course, there's black people who say, oh, they couldn't even stand the sun. But what's funny is there's Caucasians living there today. The Hyksos were there, the Greeks were there, the Romans were there. They just get mad when you point out things like that. Green, Wadi, Anubis. Although Anubis is traditionally represented as a black skin, and Anubis is the one with the dog-headed god. He's the one that's got the dog-headed looking kind of thing, bow wow, you know, kind of looking dog-headed god. And I've got a video coming up about his original mountain, and I did one not too long ago too about it. And there's a lot of people that believe the original Sphinx was Anubis and then changed 2 times after that into what it is now. But because its head's so small and all these aspects about it. But we'll get into that another time. But there are a number of texts, though, depicting him with golden hue of the other gods and not necessarily that dark color, although the jackal and things like that are shown to have that. And so there's a tradition with it, and then there's also a symbology, and jackals are, you know, running around at nighttime and trying to pick at things and doing stuff. And of course they ran around in the graveyards, and they would chase off people coming to the graveyards, hint hint. And so and this is starting whenever they started to raise dogs and things like that idea. So this protector situation of dogs and how they do this, and they'll let you know if somebody's out there, and then they go out there. See, that's how it works. And there's some stelae that talk about this, but some of it gets disgusting, and I won't go there right now. Green, Waj, was mixed from malachite and the copper minerals and symbolized goodness, growth, life, and the afterlife, and resurrection. It's like plants and stuff sprouting up. The Egyptian afterlife was known as Field of Reeds, and so this is where they grew all the giant fields of reeds. And this is what the people, the Hyksos, crossed when they left. And you hear about this in the Bible, that they call it the Sea of Reeds also. And in the Bible, you always say, oh, it's the Red Sea. And if you'll look at the old ancient script, it really actually says the Sea of Reeds. And that's what they had crossed. And there really wasn't some giant parting of a sea, but that's not in this video either, but I guess it is. In some eras, as the field of malachite, and was always associated with the green color. Wilkinson writes how green was naturally a symbol of growing things, of the soil itself, and it goes on to point out how in ancient Egypt, to do green things was a euphemism for positive and life-producing type things. And hey, that's kind of green, and we still kind of use a little of that today, I guess you'd say. And of course, because money's green, see, and fruit crops are green, and there's a reason that that kind of has that aspect along with it too. And the green is go, you know. So, but yellow isn't caution and red isn't stop. That's in a car light. Behavior in contrast to red things, which symbolized evil. Green is the color of the dying and reviving god Osiris, and also of the eye of Horus, which that's not true because the tomb scripts actually say, I knit on the head of the blue-eyed Horus, the god who acts, and you see the blue eye all over the place. In fact, there's these warding eyes that they have, and they're blue with white in them, and a little ring in there, and it's the evil eye and all this stuff, and it comes from that, and that's where it is the eye of Horus, and it wards off evil people. One of the most sacred objects in the Egyptian mythology is that, though. In early tomb paintings, the spirit of the deceased is shown as white, but later as green to associate the dead with the eternal Osiris. In keeping with the symbolism of resurrection, green is also used to depict the goddess Hathor, Lady of the Sycamore, or like a date palm. Hathor was closely associated with the sycamore tree with renewal and transformation, so were the date palms. And you see the symbology even in the Bible. And Buddha sat below a date palm at one point, or a fig tree, and he was enlightened. Adam and Eve were under a fig tree, or it seemed they were eating from a fig tree, because whenever they dressed themselves, they put on figs. But that's for another video, where I can give you a myriad of things people have tried to come up with an idea, even if you're just trying to make up some kind of correlation to go with a mythical story where a lady grows from a rib and eats from a magic tree because a talking snake tells her to. But green also shows rebirth. Mummies of tattooed women suggest the ink could have been green, blue, or black, and tattoos have been linked with the worship of Hathor. And you look at tattoos and simple jailhouse tattoos and stuff like that, and they're kind of a bluish green or green, and quite often not as straight black, but you'd like to get a black out of it, but then again, do you? White symbolic also, hedge, and also known as shesep, was made from chalk mixed with gypsum and often employed as a lightener for other hues and symbolizing purity, sacredness, cleanliness, and clarity. White was the color of Egyptian clothing and so associated with daily life, and was frequently employed in artistic pieces to symbolize the transcendent nature of life as well, and the gossamer of things, almost in that symbolism, like the Greeks eating the grapes. But priests always wore white, and so did temple attendants and temple personnel taking part in a festival or rituals. The objects used in rituals, such as bowls, plates, and altar tables, were also usually made of white alabaster. It says they were made, but I'd say usually, because I found a set of ritual bowls, and there's some that are tan, and there's these ones with this orange swirl stuff, and that cool bowls they used to use sometimes. Some of those are used. White, like the other colors, was used realistically in depicting clothing and other objects that color in real life, but frequently is employed to highlight the importance of some aspect of a painting. In some cases, it did both of these things. The white crown of Upper Egypt, for example, is routinely referred to as white, and so it's realistically depicted, but also symbolized the close connection of the gods employed by the king, and so symbolically represents purity and sacredness. Then there's that red crown too, huh? Red, which is Deshur, and Desheret was the name for the red desert that they have out there, and that's where we get desert from, because you have a Shemitic sh sound on everything. That's Shemitic, Semitic, and so you take the H off of Desheret and it becomes desert, and there you go. And there's some linguistics for you today. Made from oxidized iron, red ochre, which is a paint that's common even today. You look at something like Bob Ross, and he uses red ochre and alizarin crimson. It's used to create flesh tones and symbolizing life, but also evil and destruction. Red was also associated with both fire and blood, and so symbolized vitality and energy, but also could be used to accentuate a certain danger or define a destructive deity, like they had Set, the god Set, for example, who murdered Osiris and brought chaos to Egypt at the beginning of time, was always represented with a red face or red hair, or completely in red, or they had red flowing hair and blue eyes, and it's associated with Typhon. And this goes back to a volcanic god, which may have something to do with the Atlantis situation, by the way, and all the volcanism and volcanoes that went off in that earlier times there. That if you look, there was a lot of them going off, but volcanoes going off and how they spew down their lava, and this looks like somebody's red hair and so on, so it's associated with it in ancient gods and stuff. I can even show you a place where Yahweh is said to be a redhead, but we're going to go from that. One also sees this pattern in a written work where the color red is seen. Well, it's not Yahweh, it's the volcano god of the Sumerians, but that ends up, never mind. One also sees this pattern in a written work where the color red is sometimes used to signify a dangerous character aspect in a story. In wall paintings and tomb scenes, red must be carefully interpreted within the context of the scene. Although it is frequently used for an emphasis of danger or even evil, it is also commonly symbolizing life or a higher being in depictions in the Eye of Ra, and they show it as being fire. And you look at a lot of the pillars, and they're all grounded with that color, and not a brown, and not this, and not green, which you'd think, hey, is that the starting of a plant? It even makes it look like a plant, and it flowers at the top. That thing's got to be done in green. No, they paint a red at the bottom. Why? Because that's the bzzz that makes it all happen. But anyhow, realism in color. Each color was created by mixing various naturally occurring elements, and each became standardized in time in order to ensure uniformity in artwork. An Egyptian male, for example, was always depicted with a reddish-brown skin, which was achieved by mixing a certain amount of the standard red paint recipe with standard brown. Variations in the mix would occur in different areas, though, and some of it was much more oxide, and so it oxidized later, and whenever it oxidizes, it turns more of a brown-type color over time. Not too much, but a little, almost like a little Photoshop effect, but we're not going to whine about that in any way. It doesn't matter. This color of the male skin was chosen for realism in the piece in order to symbolize the outdoor life of most males, while Egyptian women were painted with lighter skin using yellow and white mixes since they spent more time indoors. And I'm telling you, it's not just that, it's that Caucasian Edict where the man was supposed to work and the woman was a housewife, and this family pack thing that goes on that, I mean, sad to say it, black people are lacking in. Some 77% of black households are single parents, you know, and so, you know, it makes you wonder. Gods were typically represented with gold skin, or the yellowish skin, reflecting the belief that gods did in fact have gold skin. An exception to this is the god Osiris, who is almost shown with green or black skin, symbolizing fertility, regeneration in the underworld. Osiris was murdered, though, and returned to life by Isis, who's always shown as pale, and then descended to rule over the land of the dead. The colors used in his depictions all symbolize aspects of his story. Whether a scene shows a man and his wife at dinner or the gods in a solar barge, each color had its accuracy, had to accurately represent the various themes of the events that are shown, right? And so there's exceptions to this. There's black people that are in Egypt and stuff. In fact, Menuhotep had a concubine, which they say, they make note that it's a Negroid concubine, a Nubian lady, and if you look, she's a little bit mahogany instead of black like the Nubians here. But the Egyptians are still drawn as pale as hell, right? And then someone is drawn darker that's an outer worker and doing things that's in work, right? And so is this guy who's bringing the leg of a cow to her. Hey, you want some lunch? And you know, it's just, did they ever walk in with a whole leg of a cow? I mean, what the hell? But yeah, maybe they did. They showed her the cow, and then they went off and cooked it and stuff, and then all this was fixing to be her lunch. Who knows, right? But she was catered to, and the belief is that she had a mulatto son, and that mulatto son was reared up and was supposed to have gone to Nubia and started over there, because at this time Nubia is subjugated by them and under governors from Egypt, and they wanted to kind of back out of that and give it to them. Crap goes wrong. I'm not going to go into it off of it and everything, but there you go. And they like to show this, and it's great that he had a black concubine, but this also shows you the Egyptians weren't Negroids, because they make such a point out of this. And not the Negroes are making a point, the Egyptians are making a point out of this. And then you look at the Egyptians down here, and they're not black, right? So let's go back up the top, and it's interesting because it shows you what she had to start with, and I think she was held to do so, because you can look at her here. I don't know if you can quite make it out, but Francois Marie, program manager, Helga's and Igata's answers to the ancient Egyptians. Why did they paint their skin red in their art, as though rusty brown doesn't mean dark skin? And it doesn't really mean dark skin. It's symbolic. But yeah, they probably did have a tan near the Mediterranean. Hang around in the sun all day wearing a pair of shorts, you're going to definitely tan up. Not a problem. You'll stay it year round. Not a problem. Let's see. So she starts off saying, but it's a fact they didn't belong to the Negroid race and didn't have white skin like Europeans either. Well, no, in the art you see that the priest and stuff did. The workers that went outside, just like any Caucasian that works outside, half naked, are going to become tanned. So they weren't white like Europeans. Well, they weren't like non-outdoor Europeans, but also Europeans have a hard time getting quite as tan as the people down here because a longer period of the year is in winter. Once you reach the Tropic of Capricorn and down here in the Mediterranean and south of that, it really is pretty much all year round in a summer type effect, and it never quite comes out of it. It's a common sense thing, but this doesn't affect black people because they don't change. Even if you put them in Antarctica, putting on big clothes and don't let them get any sun for a year, they'll only develop rickets and problems like that, but they won't get white. So this is another proof of but see, here she goes. This is another proof that Eurocentrists are self-served and conceptualize Africa and Africans in some way that flatters their inflated egos and further divide their conquer agenda. Oh, there she went. Yep, one phrase into it. Now she said, sure enough, they weren't Negroes, but they ain't white people, and then she just goes off on white people. That's funny, because they are Caucasians no matter what. And that's all that Caucasians say. You keep saying white people like Scandinavian, and we keep saying Caucasians like non-Negroid. And it just keeps going back and forth, and we go Caucasians, and they go, well, they weren't Scandinavian, you know. But what's funny is there's some genes from North Africa that show up in Scandinavia. Oh, so sorry. Let's go. Ancient Egyptians were not white-skinned people, but sure enough, they were not Negroes or members of the Negroid race. She puts it straight out there after she goes off on Whitey. There are superior and civilized North and Saharan African Caucasoids as opposed to inferior and uncivilized sub-Saharan African Negroids, and I can't believe she said that statement. And it's not quoting somebody else. No wonder that North and Saharan Africans, as well as the Horners, have been inducted into the extended Caucasian race, and in the late 18th century been based on their skull shape and aquiline features. No, I think she's taken out of context. We're saying that there used to be Caucasians all through the Horn of Africa, and then now at the tip up there in Ethiopia, there's admix people there now. They're like 40% admix, some even show up as 50, but that's what's there now, not was there in ancient times. It's easily known, but they don't like that. In fact, black people don't like that there were any endemic Caucasians in Africa. It kind of blows their whole idea, like, only us. And it's like, not really. In fact, nobody knew you existed until way much later, actually, and you didn't in turn know the other people existed. You're not related to Nubians. So it's almost a moot point, but let's just keep continuing here. Africans, some of these Caucasian Africans are among the blackest of all Africans. No, you're talking about the Negroids that are there now, and of course East Africans have some admix in them too. I mean, genetics is now finally proven it. People were talking it for years, and you're like, you're racist, and they're like, well, genetics shows that genetics is racist. See, so anyhow, that will be regarded as black people everywhere outside of Africa. No, Caucasians won't be, and people understand and know dark-skinned Caucasians. You can easily tell the difference, just like when there's an albino Negro. People don't have to get close before they go, oh, I thought you were white. No, it's easy to tell, and there are, strangely, these stories where black people think that all Caucasians are as albino Negroes, which is odd. I've got a video fiction to come out where it's from one of the sites that does that. It's Real History, and it's like a 6-parter, may even go farther. Anyhow, because he's got some great info in there. But let's continue before this gets too much longer. We're edging on 30 minutes here. Even the palest of North and Saharan African Caucasoids have visible and well-documented black ancestry. No, they don't. In fact, all the Negroes in that area have Caucasian admix. It's the exact opposite of what black people like to say. It really hurts Eurocentricists that Egypt is firmly located in the African soil and ancient Egyptians were not whites. They must find a way to claim them somehow. You know, here we get to the point, people, where actually what we're doing is the reverse Negro. It's this funny thing. It's where what they do is they tell you exactly what they're doing right in your face, but they put white on it. Let's change this. It really hurts Negrocentricists that Egypt is firmly located in the African soil and ancient Egyptians were not black. They must find a way to claim them somehow. You see how that rolls right out? The reality is that there is nothing comparable to ancient Egypt anywhere at any time or any form in Eurasia, and Africans have many different skin tones from near pitch black to light brown and copper brown between. They do now after admix, definitely. And the Khoisan have definitely a lighter look too, but they aren't Egyptians either, and they're really not related to the West African people either. In fact, West Africans aren't related to any of these people. They never had contact with them. They actually didn't know that Egypt existed. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing. In addition, the written word of the time is crystal clear. Ancient Egyptians were black, she says, and woolly-haired people. No, they weren't. In fact, they described some of the Ethiopians as dark-skinned and curly-haired people, and people want to take that out of context. Now they're saying the ancient Egyptians are that, and they're not. Well, they said the Egyptians came from Ethiopia. No, that's hearsay from Herodotus. Herodotus said these people said that they were the first of all people. He doesn't believe that crap. He says these people said it. If you look at a lot of Herodotus, that's what he says. He's like these. He tells you stories of cattle that walk backwards because the horns will dig into the dirt, and he tells you that ants that are bigger than dogs are running around collecting gold, and that's how India gets their gold. Is they grab the gold and get chased by the ants. He tells a bunch of stories. He also tells you the Ethiopians isn't that little country people think of nowadays. Got a video on it, but if you just look up Ethiopian with an A in the first of it, like Greeks, Ethiopia, and it'll show you that they had brown blotches everywhere in that map. What's all that? That's all the places in all their writings that they called Ethiopians. It actually means suntanned or sunburnt face or sunburnt people, and it really has nothing to do with constant dark-skinned Negroids. That would be something totally different. In fact, they never referred to Nubians as Ethiopians either. So, and they also never refer to Egyptians as Ethiops, ever. They make a clear distinction. In fact, that's what that is when they're talking about it, is the distinction. They even say Ethiopians are darker, but not quite as dark as the South Indian Ethiopians, which in India, the people down in the south right there, are not Negroid in any way, but they have darker skin. So he compares those. He does not compare them to Egyptians, even in reality of it. But so let's go on here. She's going to go on a big rant and show a bunch of pictures and stuff. And so here we see some pictures, and that's cool. The only problems that you have with it is that people don't understand these are made of wood, and that whenever you buy a new fence, it's kind of a light tan golden color, and then over time that fence gets dark. Look at that fence your neighbor got last year. It's already getting dark. Look at the one across the street. Man. Okay, so it gets dark over time. And these were mainly made out of yew wood, which is a real light tan color. It's not even a good dark tan color. It's not even, it's a little lighter than that. And they were made to view then, not made to view thousands of years later and stuff. And this guy's got a hairy chest and so on. And of course in her picture, she's like, he has afros on here, but then he does. No, this is wigs, and that's not an afro. It's not an afro, you know, definitely not. Hairy chest. It actually shows this little black blotchy scribbles they put all over him. The more close you get on his face, the more you realize he's not a black person, right? Oh, this one is. And then let's see. Further evidence that red skin is application of skin covering is the tribute bearer. This tribute bearer, not an Egyptian, a Nubian tribute bearer, found in Nakapepi's tomb. In the instance of the back of this figure, one can see the red runs into part of the hair wig, so it's a coating. Okay, so you look at this and you're like, what, over here, like somebody put a red blotch on the side of her head? What, somebody slap her head with red on it? No. Let's take a closer look at that. Yeah, I'm saying that just rubbed right off. I'm saying if you look at the way it goes, it just rubbed off. That's not been painted. In fact, you can see the square gripples and how they just fade away in the rubbed off spot. And no, that's bad interpretation. And no, she didn't have a red blotch in her hair. And no, that's just foolish. Like Michael used to say, that's foolish. No, that's ignorant. That's ignorant. Contrary to this tribute bearer, Nycapepri himself is without such skin coating. He's just brown skin coloring. And now they've photoshopped the hell out of that. You can tell. But can you see his silvery blue crystal eyes? They won't go close on this picture. I don't know if I can get there enough to see it. Can you? You can see him, can't you? Whoopsie. Look at that little nose and stuff, and the eyebrows. They all have eyebrows. What's funny is, well, not really funny or whatever, which way you want to look at it, but black people don't have thick eyebrows and present eyebrows, really. They don't really even have any facial hair. Not necessarily so much a beard and all these things that you see. That all happens from Caucasian admix, really. So here, oh my God, it's a dark man. Oh my God, it's a light woman. So it's a tan man and his pale wife, and he'd be that pale too if he didn't go outside, just like the priests. The Doonch. Yep. Oh, here's a dark man, and they'd show you pictures like that. They're like, look, the Egyptians were black. And you're like, look, his wife was white. Why do you keep showing pictures like this? Look, he's black. No, actually, he doesn't have any prognasticism whatsoever or anything. He's like, and she's lighter than him. You can even see it still on his shoulder up here. That, yeah, and she's a Caucasian. He's a Caucasian. Look at that big monkey ear kind of thing. It's not like the black people that have those littler ears. Look at the monkey ears on this girl. There's a lot of them. There's a couple of pharaohs that are known as the big-eared pharaoh. They're like, hey, pronounce that name. And they're like, you know, the big-eared pharaoh. He's the one that's got his helmet pulled like that. Boom. And he's got 3 depictions of him. They all show him with big ears. So I'm guessing he's okay with it. My granddad had big ears. I kind of inherited them a little bit. Maybe it's part of the reason I used to have real long hair when I was a kid. Or no, that was just popular to do. Caucasian, Caucasian, Caucasian. So they just keep showing this. But then, oh, she says, look, she's yellow, and the yellow's on the hair too. Again, what we're seeing is it's all just rubbed off, and they didn't paint the hair yellow, blotchy black. What are we expecting? It's all bleached out? If you look at some of these wigs, though, the wigs are made out of Caucasian hair. They're not made out of Negroid hair. You can't do that. Yeah, they don't find any of that. It's not a thing. And, oh, there's dark people on the boat. Oh, there's light people carrying the coffin. What's that? That's the priests. Well, they're going to get tan now. Yeah, but they're pale until that moment, yeah. So, can be said for white is noted above with the mourning women caring for the deceased remains. And then she starts showing Fulani people, and of course Fulani are known to have a high admix. And she goes, look, some are yellow and some are red. So then, no, they don't have anything to do with the Egyptians. They don't have anything to do with that. So they're using some symbology. Did they learn something from Egyptians a long time ago about symbolic and colors and stuff? Or I don't know what you're trying to prove by that, but it proves nothing. Also, it's weird. If you watch them, they do this weird dance, and then they go around snapping their teeth and looking and twisting their head back and forth and blinking their eyes a bunch and trying to show off to women like a peacocky kind of display. It's kind of weird. You'd have to see it. There's a few cultures that do this type of thing. And so, wow. So here we go. Let's see if I can get the color down on that just a little bit so you can really see. I guess you can't. But they like red now, and so that means that they was kings. I'm going to wear a Chinese-looking hat, and I'm a cowboy. Hee-haw, hee-haw. No. But I like red now. That's great. Hey, we're wearing blankets that the UN gave us and stuff, and some of them even have red on them, and we do wear white face. Look at the sad look on her. It's almost like, man, I wish I was white. No, maybe that's not what you think. So, yeah, there's people that paint themselves all red now, and does that mean that they were the Egyptians? Of course not. And then they show you stuff like this, and they try to make correlations. Africans practicing traditional customs use the same symbolic coloring, and you're like, you're trying to say that? You're trying to get black people to believe that the same symbolic coloring of the Egyptians, and it's like, yeah, but look. These are tribal people that still just have sticks. Look at this. Sticks. Oh, they walk around and do this line dance. Here, these people, they paint themselves white. Are they? No, no, no. And so they're trying to say that they must have both been black, but they paint the red ones lighter than black as red for some reason, and then the women who should be just as black, yellow color, and it's just a mistake, and that they don't know what they're doing. This is where she comes off with this and stuff. And you look at this guy here, and you can't say that that's supposed to be a Negro. You can't. This is Wa, right? There's quite a few of these guys here and stuff, but you can look at these. Oh, it's brown. You can try to show as many brown ones as they can. Here's Mahepere. They said he's a noble during the 18th dynasty, and they call him that, but he's really supposed to be King Tut's castrated fan bearer that follows him into battle and da-da-da. He's like his bodyguard kind of situation. His name means lion of the battlefield. And that's not his casket, but if you look, you can kind of tell that's a Negroid right there. And he's got Negroid hair, and his wig remained glued to his scalp when his remains were unwrapped in 1901. He's often cited as Nubian by mainstream Egyptologists who came to the conclusion, based on his dark skin tone depictions in the papyrus of Mapuri, but to no written text supports he's a Cushite. No, it doesn't really and stuff, but you can tell he's a Negroid. It's just simplistic, and he's got Negroid hair, and they don't. What you don't realize is that they can take any people's hair and look at it under a microscope and tell you exactly. Yeah, and so they've done that to all the Egyptians, and they're all Caucasians. And so here's this Book of the Dead. You see right down here, and you can see he's black in the Book of the Dead, and you see over here he's black in the Book of the Dead. Now, no Book of the Dead shows him black. They always show him tan with a bunch of white gods around him and stuff, and then the black god Anubis, and then the resurrection green Osiris and stuff. But this one is actually shown as black and with a prognostic jaw and looks like a Negro. And so this kind of proves, oh, so yep, nope, doesn't have anything to do with it. Senuseret, this is Sesostris, and they go, look how dark he is, and we've talked about darkening wood. Look how light his arm is, which didn't get wet rot into it. Apparently he was laying on this side in this wet sand or wherever it happened, but look how light it is here. Now imagine that's your fence, and how light was it whenever it was made? Or let's just go with that color right there. Let's say it was this color all over and then got darker than that. Here's your tan Caucasian man. Doesn't have Negroid appearance. Hell, he looks like Conan O'Brien or something in the face. A little bit. Of course, it's hard to capture somebody's looks. He's a little doll. This thing's not tall at all. Oh, here's another one. Looks kind of Chinese. Oh my God. What kind? No. We've already seen that though before. Oh, Cod's worst statue versus his gold coffin color. So here's this statue. You can tell that's been photoshopped, but how do you get hair that long? How do you get the big monkey ears? How do you get the thick eyebrows? How do you get the non-Negroid alkaline nose? How do you get the smaller lips that aren't twice the size? No, you don't get any of that. But then that's him. But then, oh, you look at so you look at that and you go, well, maybe that's. And you look at the casket and you go, oh no, okay, no, it's not. And then they show you here, and that's a female. I don't even think that's not even the same guy. Here, yep, they're misidentifying. This is someone else. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but they're thinking of somebody else. Oh, there it is, Ninkefta. So this is Ninkefta, and they say compare Ka's golden statue, and that's not. Okay, so that's not right. Okay, they put two pictures together. Doesn't really matter though. So she shows this one again, and that's Caucasian. And oh my God, is there a bug-eyed Negro someplace? Wee! Look at this guy. Yeah. And oh, he's black. Actually, look at his little thin mouth and his thin nose, and he's looking at you, and he goes, "Who keeps saying Egyptians were black?" These West African people that are totally not related to anybody that ever was in Egypt during the time span. Oh, well, why are they doing that? I don't know. They covet a lot, even though it says in the Bible not.